Hello guys! Welcome back to Not Just Mecha. It's Marco here, and today we work on the second step of the plan, speed painting a full box set in a weekend. In the last video, I went full illustrational, using exclusively drawings and artworks to inform and guide my work on the Rotmire Creed. But in this case, even if I really like and still want to catch the vibrant sketchy energy of this picture, I prefer the more balanced scheme used on the physical models. You know that I usually suggest to avoid using other miniatures as reference for your own painting, simply because they are already a simplified version of a render of reality. But this doesn't mean that you cannot use their general scheme and its proportions. Thinking of the box set as a whole, something like a cohesive single artwork, I made the Nurgle guys my warm force. And even if this scheme is based on the red core of the armors, I plan to create a general sensation of contrast between the two warbands, setting this unit in a colder mood and environment, something like a well-lit night scene, able to make the silver elements look like high-quality steel and the gold really pop. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe! And if you want to support my work, check my Patreon page up here, where I publish the real-time footage of my videos and extra cool stuff. Thanks a million, guys! After all this talking about cold vibes, I'm sure a lot of you have already predicted my first move. This blue foundation is here to infuse every single subsequent layer with its tone and temperature, that, with all their subliminal storytelling, will give a strong character and a powerful first visual impression of the warband. In other terms, your eyes may not notice it, but your brain will. Of course, this is also a great way to cut the full step of simply priming the plastic out of the process. And as you'll see in the next steps, it's also an extremely efficient base to speed paint the other overlapped layers. Here Blue is not only the cold delivery system of the environmental mood, but also a great source of contrast with the warm tones of the general color scheme. And with this quick step, I make it a more explicitly functional part of the visible scheme. I use a deep, warm violet blue instead of a simple darker blue to add a bit of subtle extra variety to the flow of cool tones. And spraying from below with a steep angle, I set in a single pass all the deepest low shadows, basically creating with this value jump the sensation of a zenithal light source. In the spirit of a super efficient speed painting workflow, here is the most daring trick of this process. These models are covered in armor that mathematically represents the major volume of the sculpts. So I choose to set these large areas in the quickest and simplest way possible. I spray this mid/high value neutral silver with a strong zenithal angle to maximize the ability of the spray to passively catch and render volumes, instantly setting 80% of what I have to paint. Metallic paint is never fully opaque, especially when atomized through the airbrush and in the outer borders of the spray cone, and it's always sensible to the tones it has underneath. So another important effect of the light blue base is to fill those micro gaps with its color. Having a non-metallic tone in the shadows helps setting stronger and deeper shadows that don't passively catch and bounce light like the metallic finish of the upper parts. But the two blocks still flow well into each other, thanks to the satin finish of the ink over the super matte foundational layer. The combination of the perfect smoothness of the airbrush and all the cold interference creates a shiny, bluish steel finish. And as mentioned before, the previous work on the lower midtones and the proper shadows is all still here in the metallic to non-metallic flow. I reinstate a non-metallic warm mid-value for skins and fabric using a fairly opaque raw sienna. With a bit of practice, you can push the use of the airbrush to the most advanced and smallest stages of the work. In this case, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because, yeah, it gives me a ton of speed in rebasing the higher spots of these areas, but it also makes everything smooth as the metallic parts. Doing this step with a brush, I can for sure create a more interesting textural contrast between clean, polished metals and rough warrior skins, without the need of extra specific work in the wet palette stage. But this is a speed paint, and the ticking clock sets my priorities. I didn't forget the low-tier non-armored warriors. Here, I simply skip the silver stage, because the cold blue layer is again a great contrasting base for the yellow warm turn of the lower midtones. I know that I'm going to lose some saturation in the optical mix of this complementary overlap, but in this case the desaturation is quite contained due to the relative opacity of this raw sienna that builds up over itself. And I paint a quick highlight, using a light skin tone on a steep angle from the top. That becomes a proper full-body zenithal for the little guys, and their simpler and lighter overall scheme. Depending on your precision with the airbrush, you might have the need to fix a few spots here and there. In my case, I quickly check the borders where the two tones and finishes meet. And I rebase the big chains in the middle of the white fabric, where again I gave coverage priority to the larger volumes. Now I am at the top of the hill, and every new step will be the snowballing effect of this well-calculated preparatory work. I prepare my own custom tone for the red sections of the armors. Here I plan to use a tiny drop of Cygor Brown to tone down the vibrancy of the mix, but in the end I didn't need it. But I add a few drops of my fluid silver to make the mix more intrinsically metallic. Painting GW contrast or inks over a light metallic base, you usually don't need anything else to get a fully functioning colored metallic finish. But in this case, I know that my edges and all the outer borders are not incredibly precise because of the sprayed skin tones. So that tiny bit of metallic pigment and its extra opacity will automatically fix and uniform all those elements without really altering the behavior of the paint in the middle areas. Classic two birds with one stone. I render the base for the bronze gold elements with a simple single pass of pure Agaros dunes over the metallic silver. With the gold and the bases in place, and a more defined plan for the oil stage in mind, I felt that the red armors were a bit too dark. So I go back, pushing their value to higher territories, using my original mix that is still here on the table, but with more silver inside, to make it a bit lighter and more opaque. The work until this point has been super quick and carefree, and to maintain this positive trend, still efficiently fixing all the loose ends, I need oils to do the heavy lifting. And that's why I'm using dark, rich, highly pigmented paints, with more opacity than my usual selection for washes, to maximize staining power and the intensity of the dark definition. The dark, opaque and semi-opaque colors in the middle are the core ingredients of my mixes, and magenta and blue are here mostly to add extra vibrancy and saturated tones. I use a dark blue-violet on the red plates. As always, the wash is a simple mix of paint and odorless white spirit, applied over non-varnished models. That gives me the advantage of being more versatile, easier to control, and as you can tell from my careless application, more forgiving than its acrylic counterpart. Then a heavy coat of dark blue on the silver parts, both to set super sharp panel lines and tones. I use a warm mix of black, brown and magenta for the gold elements. This is something I decided on the spot, after seeing the other tones applied. I want the helmets and the gold ornaments to pop out from the scheme as something different, so I maximize their contrast with all the rest, making them my warmer elements coming out from the general cold palette. And a similar but less vibrant and more brownish mix for the skins that need some extra warmth to become more realistic and alive. After 15-20 minutes, I clean the excess of paint with Q-tips and the tiniest hint of white spirit, to keep a clear separation between the different applications and clean sharp lines and edges. Makeup sponges tend to spread and blend the excess, creating soft, organic, flowing transitions. But on armors and sharp geometric shapes, I prefer the precision, the short range, and the controlled motion of the cotton swab that I use against the details and with a zenithal motion to leave more paint in the recesses and the lowest parts. And this is what I've got after 3 hours of work. I always tend to need a couple of hours on the wet palette to feel good about my speed painting renderings, so I already know that I'll end up around the 5 hours. But considering the small size, the crazy density of details of these models, and the extra little touch-up on the values of the red armors, I'm still pretty happy with the result. To the new wet palette, to add the organic brushstrokes and the painterly energy of the illustration, and to one of my most contained selection of tones for something like this: black and white, a couple of red tones, and 2 classic, not super imaginative colors for the skins. I start with non-metallic paints, because I want the focus to remain on armors and equipment, So in the last stage, I can easily balance the impact of the different elements, pushing definition, saturation, and general visual interest of the focal points. Because of the small quantity and size of the organic elements, this stage of the work is extremely quick and simple, and mostly focused on breaking the smoothness created by airbrush and oils to render painted and physical tactile contrast with the polished metals all around. As promised, the gold highlights are my warmer and most saturated point of light to make helmets and heraldry pop. I have a good value jump and a fairly strong chromatic contrast between the painted gold and the one on the palette. So a few well-placed highlights on the higher spots are more than enough to set a powerful final shine. The metallic elements here are my real protagonists, able to bring everything together with the continuity of the edge highlights, that with just a few brushstrokes make shapes and details more defined and easier to read, and in general more interesting, thanks to the dynamic and unpredictable behavior of real light over the metallic finish. My original mix for the few edges of the red pectorals. And a simple, low-key silver for the trims. Oh, and of course, all the nipple piercings. I don't know you, but I would keep those under the armor. You know, just to be safe in battle. And here is the final result. My spin on the studio box art scheme and rendering of this warband that shows how a specific style or finish can be reached in many alternative ways, with still the space for your personal cinematography. Again, oils are the main engine of the workflow, able to turn a simple structural sketch in an almost finished model in a single, quick and loose application, even if these minis have way more details than the simple, super organic sculpts of the Rotmeyer Creed. But as always, products, steps and techniques are a secondary thing that comes from a strong vision of the result. In my case, a cold scene set in the lifeless desolation that these guys spread wherever they go, that informed my every choice from start to finish.
If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. Remember that you can ask me anything down below with a comment, and you can follow my projects during the week using one of my socials. And if you want to support my work, check my Patreon page and join the community, or maybe ask for a commission. See you next week, guys!